From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from Texas, the US, Valmiki. Valmiki, thank you very much for joining me today. The way I love to do it, I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So please, can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
All right. Good to be here, Mehmet. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation. A little bit about me. I wear multiple hats for this show. It's going to be the Chief Information Security Officer for Accolite, and it's a global organization, engineering services. Some of the sharpest people that I work with and have worked with in the industry, and get to work with them on a daily basis. So really excited about the work that we're doing here at Accolite. And overall, I have about 20 years in cybersecurity. Before it was called cybersecurity, have worked previously with Deloitte, with Cognizant, with EY. So my entire career has been building up this industry with my colleagues and partners. This is a relatively pretty young industry when you compare to the others. So it's been a fantastic ride. On my other role, I serve as the chairman and founder of Cyber Future Foundation, where we connect cybersecurity leaders such as myself and my colleagues to the C-suite and business, so that we can have an informed decision, and businesses can make risk management in cybersecurity a core part of their work. So glad to be here.
Great. Thank you very much, Valmiki, for this introduction. And I have to say, like you said, because, you are on the cybersecurity side, and with all this ride that you had, it's not the most funny, I would say, because people, when they think about cybersecurity, they think it's easy. They think it's something, like it's just like a couple of things, but it's one of the hardest thing, actually, one of the hardest jobs, actually. So what attracted you to this field, Valmiki?
Well, as I said, first I acknowledge the fact that this is not an easy job, and not for the faint-hearted for sure. You got to have a humor, but looks like that also can land you in trouble. Um, but in general, cybersecurity is a very challenging, very intellectually stimulating, and if you are rightly motivated, it's a very rewarding job, right? So I didn't actually plan to be in cyber. It's just grown up on me, and I have grown into this industry. So I started off with my career as an engineer way back, with Infosys in the first days, and then went on to work for Amdocs, which before cybersecurity became hot in Israel, and now known for now so many other challenges we are navigating through that, to that area. But I got trained under some of the best, technologists and engineers and business leaders at Amdocs, followed by Deloitte. Got at the edge of cutting, bleeding edge solutions, and at Deloitte, and then worked with an organization that was deeply ingrained in, in identity security, infrastructure security, and then finally coming over to Cognizant. So I grew into this industry, and there are only so many of us. It's great to have this small, tight knit network, but it's very challenging when you don't have the support that you need to drive as you're growing in the career, and that's been a constant challenge. But I think, personally speaking, I would not have chosen any other career. I'm really glad that I've grown in this industry.
Great. So you mentioned something interesting, Valmiki, about the challenges actually, and
Yeah.
for someone like yourself who's now in the leadership role, um, and I speak a lot to CISOs here locally, and regionally, and even globally, and I love to hear their perspective because, as we mentioned, it's not like a tough job because, of course, we're gonna discuss this all the challenges from technology perspective, but also the challenges from delivering the message to the rest of the leadership team in an organization.
For sure.
So
Sure.
how your experience with all these big names that you just mentioned like helped you in developing a way to communicate it to non-technical people, to business mainly, and
Mhm.
what is if you can share that with us as well, a secret sauce, if we can call it like this way, that makes the life of a CISO or anyone who's in a leadership role in cybersecurity to talk to the rest of the board.
Yeah, you touched upon a very, very important thing that I think people have overlooked over a period of time, like for cyber specifically, as it's grown in inside technology, right? Cyber came out of technology, and then all of a sudden now we understand the implication of cyber across the board. I have a first principles based approach where I think cybersecurity is currently the way it's been addressed and all. It's not necessarily a technology issue. It's a English language. Probably it's a language issue, right? And communication is key. As an engineer myself, and I believe me or not, I've been all my life a very much of an introvert, right? It took me a lot of internal coaxing to come out and talk about things. First, you talk about things that you know very and you're confident of, and that's primarily technology that we have been implementing, right? So I have had the good fortune to work with some of the best leaders. In fact, during my days at Amdocs, I was part of a skunk team that worked with the C-suite at Sprint and Nextel, and it was a very small team. I learned from the business how they talk to, how they speak with you, how they speak to the market, the same message, but it exudes confidence and transparency and collaboration. So communication, as Mehmet you mentioned, is incredibly important. And I think that is the key pillar of all relationships, whether relationships with you and your technology teams, or you as a leader with other leaders who are not in this space, who don't understand the jargons, the technological nuances, right? So over the period of time, I had great exposure and the opportunity to work with C-suite leaders from the get-go. At Deloitte, at Cognizant, at EY, and in fact, that is what led me to, institute this Cyber Future Foundation, because I knew, or I was fortunate enough to have direct access to C-suite through the companies I work for, but not necessarily all other technology leaders, especially the CISOs, have that exposure, right? They're called into a 5-minute meeting and they are trying to put together a 40-page deck to present. And how can you distill what you know so deeply into the language and understanding that your business leaders who may not need or who may not know and need not have that deep understanding. They just need the crux of the issue and what impacts business, how it affects their decision making. And that is what, the good fortune that I had personally. And I had I really wanted to share it out and give it out to my colleagues and those that are growing up in this field. So I believe what you raised is very important, that those that have access to leadership, those that have been, coached by the best, need to give it forward in whichever way it only makes the CISO's job better.
Yeah, great point actually, Valmiki. And this is what I'm trying now to tell anyone, anyone, and especially people in tech, because this show and my work outside of the podcast is to
Yeah,
talk to technology leaders and to talk even to entrepreneurs. And I tell them rule number one, more than, of course, you need to know the technology in and out, especially if you are a CTO, a CISO, or whatever. But
right.
learn the soft. Let's. I don't like the word soft skill. I like to call it essential skill, right? So it's not a
Yes,
soft
I
skill.
like.
Yeah. So mainly, how to be able to communicate, how to get out of this stereotype of being introvert, because I thought I'm an introvert myself for years, and then I discovered
Sure.
like I'm not. So, but nevertheless, now I know that you focus, when I was preparing, for today, you focus a lot in your work around risk management. And of course, like one of the main tasks that any cybersecurity leader is to think about the risk management. Now, what I'm, little bit curious about it, and this is something that comes up very often, especially across other CISOs, and even when I talk to vendors as well, is when we talk risk, right? So, and you need to go to the business, like how it's essential to quantify this risk in order, so the board can take action. Because, especially when you need to do an investment, for example, there's a lot of times when, the ROI, let's say it's very obvious, right? So, okay,
Yeah.
we invest this amount and we get this. But when it comes to risk,
Yeah.
how is the best way to communicate again this to the board?
Very loaded question, Mehmet. I'll break it
I
down
know,
as far as I
please.
understand, right? So first thing first, I am glad that you mentioned about the risk part, right? I think cybersecurity is a risk management function. It's actually, most of the programs that I have developed in my capacity at, previous to Accolite here has been those cyber risk management programs as part of enterprise risk management programs, because then
Mhm.
it's threaded into the bigger narrative. It is part of the business, it's part of the C-suite understanding, and you are able to actually convey not the technology vulnerabilities but what it actually means for the business, right? So you are able to qualitatively describe risk in a way that business understands. Now, cyber is a very, very dynamic environment, right? Things are changing every day. By the time you are done patching one thing, you have another vulnerability raised. By the time you have trained your people on a certain, threat vector, whether it's phishing or now we have QR phishing, like quishing. It's really quishing. Very the way it starts out, but it's very dangerous. You have trained people on one vector, something else comes up. By the time you have refined tuned your processes to deliver and manage a certain risk, another comes up. So I think, quantitatively putting cyber together in dollars and cents, and quantitatively putting this in a gauge is extremely hard. And that is why there are certain experts who specifically work in the quantitative risk, risk quantification area. It's a very well defined space now and maturing. um, the way we look at cybersecurity as a risk imperative is by identifying what are the key risk areas, key risk indicators, what are the leading risk, leading indicators, and what are the lagging indicators. Tie that to key performance indicators for cyber in terms of the managing the threats and vulnerabilities. The mean time to detection, response, and then resolution and response. Uh, uh, there's very key areas, and then in terms of response and resilience, we can talk in terms of how can you recover and what's your recovery time objective, tied back to technology, underpinnings that are there. So now we're able to break down the different components of cyber, especially those that can be quantified, and then have a quantitative risk analysis, right? So I don't know if you have worked with or have been exposed to, or your viewers may know probably the FAIR Institute. I was actually speaking at the FAIR Institute's annual meeting a week or so back, and they are. If you haven't explored, please, I highly encourage you to go look at FAIR Institute. Um, and their quantitative risk methodology is probably one of the most widely adopted now in the industry. It's not there where it's the interesting thing is I was on a panel which was like the aspirations or ambitions of quantitative risk. Which is very forward looking. I love to dream about future, because if you cannot dream, you cannot dare. If you cannot dare, you cannot do,
True.
right? So in terms of quantifying risk, I think we are kind of getting there. If you think about qualifying risk, I think we have a certain impact already made in the business. So when the business understands qualitatively what the risk areas are, but I definitely appreciate bringing up the quantitative piece of it, which I think absolutely has to be taken forward. Yeah, and then cyber insurance, for example, another area probably will touch. is that, when cyber insurance offerings started a few years back, they didn't even know what they're going for, right? I mean, they signed cyber insurance, underwritings, and then they paid 100% of the claims, and then slowly that is morphing into a little bit more mature part, and nobody can afford to take that quantitative risk from an insurance industry to pay up for every breach that's happening, right? So I think we are marching forward in multiple directions, which is definitely very, very encouraging.
Great. Now you mentioned something which you answered a question that I prepared, but which is fine. So about having the risk part of the enterprise risk. This is very important. Now I am trying to understand, or let me rephrase it. I'm trying to see if really, because some people claim, okay, we talk about cyber risk. So cyber risk is all coming from IT, right? So because we are buying systems, and these systems, whether they are in the cloud, whether they are on premise, whatever. So they are managed mainly by IT operations, like by the IT
Mhm.
team, right? Now, so we have the CISO, we have the probably the risk people who are in the enterprise, and we have the CIO, right?
Right.
So do you see the CISO role overtaking what the CIO is doing, or do you see like still it's two different things, because this is focusing
Yeah.
on one part, and the other is the CIO focusing on maybe the operations part of it? But at the end of the day, because like everyone should go and report to the board, right?
Yeah.
So from responsibility perspective, and I mean from coordination perspective,
Right.
how do you see this shaping in the future? Because you talked about the future as well.
I absolutely love this question. Okay, you're actually hitting on many of these areas that I have kind of worked for almost a decade now. This particular organizational structure is very close to me. This is an area that I have spent years on several panels and discussions and private discussions with my clients, colleagues, and friends. Uh, you know, uh, I think organizationally speaking, the role of a chief information security officer or a chief security officer or any such role that is clearly defined as the responsible authority for cybersecurity has gone into prominence now. In fact, one of my good friends, Tim Brown, just got personally, sued by the SEC yesterday for his role in the company, and previously for Joe Sullivan at Uber and all other folks that we have worked with for several years. uh, this role is just coming into prominence. It's not really well defined. It doesn't have the authority and the budget and the teeth that it requires to actually remediate issues that they find out. I shared this with one of my friends yesterday when I got the Tim Brown news. Is that if every CISO started blowing the whistle, the cacophony is going to be, make the world deaf, because the we are sitting on a pile of technological vulnerabilities. Those cannot be easily ripped and replaced. Okay? And we are building faster every day, newer technologies that are adding new to it, new threat dimensions, new threat vectors, and new exposures to cyber threat that has not been managed previously at that scale. So one thing is we have to protect the past, but we also, we have to defend the past, we have to protect the future, right? I think
Right.
this comes from a beautiful quote that one of our leaders at CISA in the USA had initially mentioned, and I think that should become a key principle on which the CISO's role, whether they report to the CIO or they directly report to the board, shapes up. It is not definite yet. For the last 10 years, I have asked this same question, and I don't think I've got a clear answer. None of us have at this point.
Wow, this is very deep, I would say, Valmiki, because many times in previous lives, let me call it this way. So I used to go to the security team and I'm saying, look, I have something that, yes, it is with your other colleagues, but I think you should listen to me. And then the answer was like, hey, look, we understand what you are saying. We can see in from which angle you're trying to approach us, but we don't own these systems, and our role is just like they put it in this, like, we are consultants, we cannot enforce, right? So we just give guidelines, we cannot enforce things. And this is like, immediately it sparked something in my head. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
fine.
very much.
So why then, everyone, if let's say there's a ransomware attack, which is now very widespread,
Yeah,
like, the first people to go blame, and I'm not saying it's to blame, the other guys, of course, but I mean, the first ones to blame are the cybersecurity guys. Hey, you didn't do the right job.
yeah,
While, maybe, as you said, like, it's a vulnerability or a past that no one have done it. Maybe people raised, the flag multiple times. Hey guys, like, this is a known issue here. You need to close this. Yeah. So I can understand this. I don't know where the things are going, but I believe, I'm not big fan of splitting things, Valmiki. Like, I believe, like, there should be an authority for cybersecurity, because it's with all what we are seeing with the data
yeah,
and how
yeah,
much is important. So someone should have the authority,
yeah.
at least to be peer to the CIO. And like, maybe, when you have this very famous, like, you have two authentication to do something. So maybe it should have two approvals level when something need to take decision about. I'm just
Yeah, yeah.
thinking
No,
out
so
loud now.
you're very right, right? So in terms of the relationship, I think for the most part, CISOs have reported to CIOs, right? It was under IT, under information technology, but I think there is a level of conflict of interest there, because you are asking someone who's reporting to you to protect and to verify and validate all of that you are building, right? So I think there is a natural understanding now evolving that these two roles need to be separated out, and these two roles should report to the same level. So whether the success of a CISO, I believe, has for a long time dependent on on the kind of boss that they had, right? But I think it's getting slowly more defined. I have had very successful CISOs under CIOs. I mean, with all due respect, I think there are very, very forward-looking CIOs who have actually established cyber programs, brought in new CISOs, and established that and given them the authority to work. And I think that's growing. However, the interesting, you are also tracking a trend that most of the CISOs have now become CIOs, right? So it is very interesting. I have Byron Davis and but quite a few of our friends and the colleagues who were CISOs, and then now they have become CIOs themselves, and they are responsible for for not only building the systems but also managing, which I think is another way to look at it. You cannot be both, right? These are two distinct roles. One is for developing information systems, and that is for protecting information systems, right? These are two distinct roles and should go. Another area that I've seen, some of my friends do really well is, working in under general counsel. There are CISOs who are reported to CFOs, which have not really gone very well, because
Mhm.
finance, the motivations and the incentives for finance is not the same as security. It's a very different functions. But I have seen when CISOs have reported to general counsel, they have been very successful. But the organization is not structured to fund the CISOs, because general counsels have a different line of operation and budget, right? So I think that model. So we are going through a very, very transient space. I think transforming this industry into having the right direction for the CISOs. But more I think about it, I think CISOs need to be reporting directly to the chief executive and to the board. And in fact, I will point you to some of the interviews that I have done with my colleagues, and probably can share some of that. But eventually, I think this transformation will lead to having the CISOs report to the chief executive than to one of the other C-suite peers.
Mhm. Yeah, make complete sense here. Now, again, into the area of risk, right? So can we say, because also you have worked with the big names, and I know, like, whether it's Cognizant, AI, and EY, sorry, and all these big names. So you have seen multiple verticals, I would say.
For
So
sure.
do you think, like, things differ from one vertical to another when it comes to risk, or there are like some specific verticals, let's say maybe oil and gas, or maybe defense, where the concept of risk is completely different than other places.
Absolutely. So yes, indeed. I had the good fortune to actually, my past job at EY was building up cybersecurity programs for verticals. So I have spent time. Previously, I was in healthcare and finance, which is finance, of course, is the maturest, most mature in terms of cybersecurity. There's a lot of investment just because of the compliance and regulatory regime that they have to operate under. And then there's a natural understanding of the risk, especially cyber risk as it pertains to the business risk. Healthcare took rightly after. I think if you remember when HIPAA came up, and all the other the combination of HIPAA with Family Act, GLB Act, and then SOX, for public traded companies, and all of these, and then GDPR in terms of privacy and all of the privacy regimes. So it has matured. When I moved from those and I came to EY, I started building the technology, media, telecom. There I saw that, technology companies and industries, they are the ones who are selling cybersecurity technology, but they're the most vulnerable. Okay. First thing, I have to admit. And it has not improved. It has only convoluted more because there are so many of them now, right? Then media and telecom, I think, had a different sense. The media actually got wake up call when Sony incident happened, right? The entire Sony incident was a big incident for the entire media call. And then telecom, I think, has been technologically very mature, but in terms of security and managing that risk has evolved over time. Definitely a long ways to go. Then I moved to automotive, right? That was my second year at UI. I was building up a vehicle security organization, and I've been part of the automotive industry for a long time. It's part of the cyber task force at ITSA, which manages broad systems, including emergency management systems. So there is a different threats and severe vulnerabilities that are there that have started to get resolved. And now moving forward, all the vehicles are connected, whether you agree or not, right? Whether it's an electronic vehicle or not, people think only Teslas and these are connected, right? Every vehicle is connected in one way or the other, and there's exposure. So I have seen a growing sense of urgency in that. Then subsequently, I served on my last 2 years at EY was the global chair for our oil and gas, energy security business and critical infrastructure. So I've seen this space very closely. And I think that is where my biggest fear is, that because we are sitting on so much legacy that, this decade is the decade of finding out, okay, of discovery, how much of exposure we have. And then on
Mhm.
top of it, building out and restructuring, transforming some of those. So I have worked with pretty much every big name that you can think of, or even the mid market suppliers in oil and gas, and especially oil and gas, and then broadly in the energy sector. I think there's a long way to go in this industry for us, and they're all different. They're all maturing, evolving, and progressing towards the right direction.
Yeah, you mentioned something about vendors, and a couple of episodes back, my friend Richard Hollis, like he was with me on the show, and the whole episode was about how vendors failed. All these years, because actually everything, it's coming because of some vulnerability. Every day of course, like we cannot secure anything 100%, but
Yeah.
his point was like for 30 plus years or so, like still, for example, we have flaws in routers, switches, which is, he said, to his point, that should not happen anymore because we have enough experience in the protocols and all this. But anyway, but to your point, and this is why I wanted to ask you, how much, you know maybe it's a little bit weird question, I know, but from your experience, because you mentioned the vendors, how much the vendors, in the way they position themselves, sometimes actually they do cause damage when it comes to cybersecurity in general and to risk in specific.
Well, I have a very clear view about this. It's not, it might be controversial, but I think technology is actually, when it comes to technology vendors, especially startups, and I am very much closely associated with a startup myself. I think it's something that the vendors should think about security more deeply and care about more deeply than they project in the industry. Okay? And the reason being that typically, if you think the cybersecurity industry, especially which is claiming to protect and defend, the infrastructure or the processes, they need to be, just working in the VC arms and all that. So they want to be good at one thing very, very sharply, like one thing very sharply they want to be good at, right? That's their unique proposition. But they are building their business, their infrastructure itself is probably not built secure, right? And that's what we're seeing now. The implications that we're seeing now is that we have pushed security brands and security vendors along with the broader technology landscape, but they themselves are not that secure because they are good at securing others for with using their products, but they are part of the supply chain. And I think that is one area that I'm personally very much passionate about and focusing on is the security of the supply chain. Security of the supply chain of these vendors, be it people vendor or be it a technology vendor. I think both ways there is a lot of progress that is required because they don't really understand the security implications that they have as an organization to organization, right? And this has to be resolved. We cannot pass the buck anymore.
Yeah, I think what's happening, Valmiki, is they are looking in from a very narrow window
Yeah,
to the things, so not seeing the whole picture, as they say.
yeah,
I'm lucky enough because I was sitting on the client side back in the days, and you have to see it from a very holistic approach, right? It's not like
yeah,
just one area.
yeah,
And I asked some of my CISO friends. I said, guys, like, how do you manage all these aspects? Because cybersecurity became very fragmented, and like very, you have a lot of point solutions out there. And then I asked them, how does your team manage all this? And they say, you know what, we have to manage hundreds of agents, for example.
very true.
Uh, but do you think there will be a time, maybe in the very near future, where we will start to see some consolidation in the cyberspace? I mean, to get, instead of having, just not to mention specifically these technologies, but I mean, we talk about EDRs, we talk about NDRs, we talk about this, that, SIM, all this, and
Mhm.
now people are very overwhelmed with all these terms, jargons, technologies, and we hear about it, and I want to hear your opinion. And I know it's a loaded question a little bit, but it's causing first CISOs not to stay long in their position because they become very overwhelmed,
Yeah.
shortage in the skills, and even people who work in cybersecurity, they say, you know what, this is very stressful, I cannot manage it anymore. So what are you seeing from that perspective, Valmiki?
Yeah. See, this is another area that, personally, I've been pushing for a long time in terms of, securing the innovation supply chain is what I'd call it. Right. So, large organizations, as much as I'm not a big fan of big boxes, but in large organizations give a sense of, maturity in terms of process, in terms of expectation, but they are not very well known for innovation. So innovation has to start with startups, right? There has to be point solutions. However, I think consolidation is imminent. It's already happening. We are seeing number of, I mean, even something like Cisco acquiring Splunk, right? I
Yeah.
mean, recently, there is going to be consolidation. Palo Alto just acquired another company yesterday. Dig Security, right? So I think DSPM and all that. These consolidations are now the call of the security business, right? And that will make the CISO's job in at least a little bit more predictable in terms of operations, technology operations, right? See, I have worked pretty much across the board of the Fortune 500 and Global 1000, right? In various capacities. I've actually taken on CISO roles while the companies were hunting for CISOs, and I've seen in a first person basis the challenges that they have to deal with. And when putting programs together and executing those programs, that the challenge is that you have a technology company that is providing a certain service, they got acquired by someone, and that completely changes the game, right? Both financially as well as operationally, the team's gone, the technology innovation is gone. I think innovation has to be protected. The innovation supply chain has to be protected as much as the software supply chain has to be protected. And these two together will improve only when the consolidation in the market happens at the right places. And I think that's happening. See, a lot of the cybersecurity companies have gone through an IPO, so public markets are driving both financial outcomes as well as the business outcomes for them, right? What is the best value that these companies, whether it's Palo Alto or CrowdStrike now, and Cisco and several others are providing to the market. And I think the market will drive it because there is more and more awareness in the market about the cybersecurity issues. There is more awareness there is also more interest in the market as to what are solving those issues, right? So those two hand in hand, I think, will aid the CISOs as much as we have seen um, the cyber threats evolve. I think the CISOs are getting to see. I mean, it's just starting. I think it's very early to say where the consolidation will land, but I have hope. Again, as futurists and optimists, we have to have hope that
Right.
this will only grow better.
Yeah, hopefully, I hope so too, because at the end of the day, all our lives now is digital, and we need something that we can rely really on, not only in marketing terms. And no one misunderstand me. I worked in sales as well, but I have a technology background. So when I say we need something that can really protect us, uh, this is something very crucial. Now, you mentioned a couple of times programs and education, Valmiki. Now, what makes a good security program, and how to pass this through education to the end users?
That's probably one of the most loaded questions because I'll give you the consultant answer, which is
Sure.
right, because I think cybersecurity programs need to be built on frameworks, which I believe we have made significant advances on. See, I'm a big proponent of the NIST cybersecurity framework because it breaks it down to English language problem.
Right.
You identify, detect, protect, respond, recover. Now in version 2, you have govern and you have privacy, right? So these are the things business can relate to, and you can both communicate upwards as well as communicate downwards and build programs. So I think choosing a framework that's right for you, something as fundamental as CSF, would help you start the program well. Then you have to assess your business as to which sector you are on, which region you operate, what are the rules and regulations you have to be, what compliance regimes you have, what kind of policies and procedures will make sure that business is protected and we manage the risk, right? That's the next level, identifying and making sure that the program is structured in a way that is attuned to the business, right? That's the second step. The third step is identifying the strategy and having a clear roadmap as to what you're going to make investments in. Even if you're given an infinite amount of dollars or budget or resource, you're still not going to be able to protect 100%, right? So we all know
Right.
that. And knowing that, you should be able to prioritize, consult with your business peers and your other C-suite peers and identify where would be the best protection. What are your crown jewels? What do you need to start off with? In many areas that I've walked into, even the largest organizations, they don't even know where the crown jewels are. Excuse me. So we have to look at that. And then investment in people, process, and technology, right? Um, Fundamentally understanding the business processes and protecting that process actually helps you to repeat things faster, and then you can automate them. Sometimes you have to lead with your with inquisitive and people who are motivated by cybersecurity principles to get into the industry, but also stay in the industry. It's a game of stamina, honestly, in cybersecurity. I know many of my friends I speak with are at the end of their patience for that particular job. But you go change another job, it's just going to be another place you're getting paycheck from, right? Um, but I think the investment in talent is incredibly, a necessity that we are overlooking, and you have to invest in talent early. So just don't be driven by technology, because technology will put you in a silo that you cannot dig yourself out. But work with a first principles based foundation, with a framework, with the processes that the business needs, and then build your program on top.
Great. And like I love, also myself, because sometimes to relate when I talk to non-technical friends, and by the way, who works for maybe majority of them, they are into startups, right? So, and I need to explain to them why cybersecurity is important even in the early phase of a company, before even become big. And I always take from the NIST frameworks just this few sentences that you mentioned, and it makes my life such easy, because I don't have to explain in a very technical terms why cybersecurity is important in the first place. Like,
Yeah.
prepare, and then
Yeah.
recover and
These
all
are
this.
very easy to
Yeah.
relate.
Yeah, exactly. So anyone even from non-technical background, they can understand this and they can relate, as you said, to business. Now we talked about insurance briefly, but I want to come back to the cyber insurance.
For sure.
Um, Sometimes I see news and I get myself mad. I don't believe, like, about the amounts, and later what happens, when an incident happens, how, the relation becomes between the insurance company or the insurance provider and the customer. From, all the experience that you have, and all, the experience that you gathered, what is your opinion in general about cyber insurance? And do you see it like really something that gonna stay in the future?
Yes, I believe so. Since we talked about risk, right? Managing risk includes several way of breaking it down, right? Some risk, you manage risk by you transfer, you mitigate in a way. Then you can do some risk transferring, and I think that's where the insurance comes into play, right? And then many times you do kind of accept the risk, right? So in one end you can accept the risk, the other end you can mitigate the risk, and the other end, at the extreme end you can transfer the risk. So I think in terms of risk transference, this is an essential tool for business. I mean, you cannot protect this organization or any organization 100% of the time. So there are certain risks that you have to take, and new threats and vulnerabilities are going to emerge. And when that happens, when you have done your not only basic hygiene but also have a plan to address the increasing maturity that you need, I think that there has to be a fallback on, and I think cyber insurance is extremely essential for that. It is a very essential tool for business, especially for the CISO who's managing risk overall for cyber, right? However, quantifying the risk, as we touched upon earlier, is very hard, right? So, how much dollars and cents? I think that again goes back to the financial principles. Sometimes a simple ransomware attack can take down an entire business. So,
Correct.
uh, you know, so if you have a $10 million cyber insurance for a $500 million business, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be adequate, right? You might just fold, and then that has happened, especially for the small and medium businesses that I work with. And that's one key reason why I am out of the big Fortune 500 and Big Four, coming and working in the mid market space with companies like Accolite, because I personally believe, spending time in the industry, that this is an area where we can have very quick uplifts with certain protections, including tools like cyber insurance that we can fall back on, but can make quick progress on the maturity side, right? So I think it's an essential tool. This is still evolving and evolved very, towards the benefit of the industry, and it will be an essential tool for the CISO.
I agree with you. Like, it's like the lost straw, right? Like, you have to recover, financially, I would say. But I've heard the stories and I've seen a lot of articles where, the cyber insurance companies start, to challenge their own customers around, and maybe back to the discussion of the CISO and the CIO, and, like, who patched, who didn't patch, who did what. So it become like a little bit, kind of, you know move back and forward between the insurance company and the customer until they can settle. And most probably, some people ask me sometimes, say, like, see, like, this is the business of any insurance company in general. Like, they try not to pay your money, right? So, but when it comes to business, it's very much different. It's not like, God forbid, you did a cast car accident and then, okay, you can buy a new car. But in case of business, you might lose the whole business, and, something cannot be compromised on. Now, this is MC. But again, if you want to add something on this,
Yeah, no, I see. I understand the viewpoint, However, I think it's a tool that's worth paying for and working with the insurance industry to make progress. With
Yeah.
If we take this tool out of the toolkit, then the financial backfill that we need to have. See, cyber insurance pays for the protection of the system as well, right? So I think it's a
Right.
thing to have. So
No,
there's
definitely. Definitely. Because, to your point, and just, like I like to make the point and the counterpoint as well.
question.
I remember I read an article about a hosting provider. I think they were in the East Coast, somewhere in the US. I can't remember exactly where, but this is like maybe 5 or 6 years back. So
Sure.
they were hit by a ransomware attack. Everything was wiped. Even they didn't have some backups. Everything was lost. And they had to go to the public and say, guys, we lost the business. Like we have nothing. And
Yeah.
if maybe there were some cyber insurers, maybe they could have at least rebuilt the business from scratch. I know that it's gonna take time to remove all the consequences like reputation damage and all these factors. But yeah, to your point, yes, it is a tool, at least financially, to support the organization in hard times. Because I think when any organization lives a cyber attack, whatever the nature of this attack is, it's a catastrophe from financial perspective, right? Now, we you touch base, on little bit the future, and again we'll stay in this futuristic place. In the past few years, everyone was moving to the cloud, and the hope was, the cloud gonna solve all the problems, both from infrastructure perspective, from application development perspective, and from security perspective.
Mhm.
But people didn't figure out that still you have to manage your own security, even you shift to the cloud.
Yeah.
Now, uh, what advice you give to organizations, because still I know a lot of them, they are still in this journey, so what they
Yeah.
can focus on moving forward when they start to shift to the cloud.
Yeah. So look, cloud security is a very core part of my my past, so to speak, and current and future. So as one of the founding members of Cloud Security Alliance, which I think is a fantastic organization, I'd love for you to check out. They're virtual in every country. Dubai has UAE also has a chapter. Check them out. They're really cool. And this journey is not new. This question that you have asked is not new. This is the question on which the CSA was built. And uh, y- you know, there's a model called shared responsibility model, which is very much adopted in the cloud security business, which is basically that the cloud infrastructure provider has responsibility for certain areas, both in terms of the functionality as well as from the security. And then when it goes to platform as a service, they have a different level of security. When it comes to software as a service, different level of security, right? Or different level of responsibility. I think that is how the business as well as technology leaders should think about in terms of shared responsibility. Not everything, is on the cloud provider. Neither you transfer the entire risk when you move to cloud. So you have to manage it based on what are you buying. Are you buying an Azure EC2, AWS EC2 instance or Azure VM, or are you buying, a Redshift a product from the AWS, right? Or you buying Salesforce, which is from the early cloud, as a CRM as a service. So depending on what you are procuring, it lands a certain amount of responsibility on you and share that with the provider.
Right. And of course, they need to do the proper risk posture management, I believe, for, based on what exactly they are utilizing from the cloud.
For sure, for
Now,
sure.
now, in the past months, we all started to talk about AI and how it's gonna affect everything. Now, I'm interested to hear your opinion, especially again on the risk management perspective and cybersecurity in general. What are you seeing in the market now, and where we could be heading?
Well, now that has become the bane of my existence. I think in terms of securing, building responsible and secure AI, which in my current capacity at Accolite, I'm personally responsible for the security, privacy, and legal along with my technology and my legal counsel colleagues. We have a SWAT team that addresses that. That in fact led to development of what is now probably the world's largest private sector initiative in responsible and secure AI for future. So I welcome you to check out, and you and your audience to check out the Cyber Future Foundation's RSafe project. Um, what we're doing at RSafe project is making sure that people don't build responsible and secure AI, in their silos, right? I had two options. I could have just, cobbled together some, technology controls and said, okay, you know, business, here is my technology control, and this is what we implement here at Accolite. But what we chose as leaders, and that's where I work with some phenomenal leaders here at Accolite. Chris Trahan, our CTO, Neet Chawla, who's the president of our AI business, and Stephen Pepera, Manoj, all of these leaders, they understand that it's better for us to, lend to a public initiative, led by the industry or the government. Now, NIST also introduced, the White House also introduced the AI imperative, the executive order yesterday. And I think collectively, this is much bigger than what we have seen in IT, in cloud. AI is a much broader. It has much broader societal implication. So it's not just the security of AI. It's not just securing AI, but also building AI in a more responsible, ethical, trusted manner. And that's where I believe that we have to work together as leaders of the industry, as well as leaders of the society, to build a more uh, you know, trusted AI and more responsible AI. We have to secure the data. We have to secure the provenance. We have to secure every aspect of it so that we can put more trust into the AI. There is no walking away for or shying away from AI today.
Will it help us in reducing the cyber threats, do you think?
I think it will aid us in managing cyber threat. These AI technologies and tools are available to the cyber, uh, you know,
The bad actors.
adversaries, so to speak, as much as it is to us. So I think we have to put our creative talent is making sure that we use AI's immense power and prowess, and stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, hopefully it will, as you said, like at least automate some of the manual work that
Very
today,
true. Very true.
yeah, security analysts they have to do, or incident response teams they have to do, probably. So the hope is that at least it will remove little bit pressure and the overwhelming feelings that
Yeah,
usually they
exactly. For
have.
taking care of the grunt work, you are still I think human is required in every loop, and humans should stay ahead of AI for good measure, right? As long as you can as a human race. But
Yeah,
and evolution takes over, the technions come out and the robots take over the world. But still, I think we can use AI to really immense amount of good in the world.
yeah. Now, as we are almost coming to the end, Valmiki, so any advice you would offer to aspiring cybersecurity professionals looking to make, their first jump in the field, or maybe because you mentioned startups, and by the way, I cover a lot about startups. Anything you would advise to founders in the cybersecurity domain?
Well, that's you could have another podcast on this one, right?
Yeah,
I work in the
we
cyber
can.
building space. Have been in this space for a long time to realize that leaders can aspire and have but they have to inspire more than they can aspire. Okay, and what you if you are I'll break it down. One is, if you're a founder at a startup, which personally I've gone through the journey. You have to think about where this aids in the bigger picture, right? You cannot just solve one problem and create more problems. You'll actually end up creating more problems. So think about the bigger picture. Try to understand the needs of the specific client you're trying to address, right? And work with them hand in hand to build. If you don't do that, you're actually creating more problem and headache for your market than not. But definitely, startup founders are essential part of the innovation ecosystem and supply chain. We must support them. On the other hand, people who are trying to get into cybersecurity for their first jobs, right? It's extremely hard. In fact, as a risk manager, it's very hard for me to give an opportunity to someone without having a personal oversight on uh, and tell my client or my business that you are the best hands, right? It's a little bit challenging to say that, but I think we need to give more opportunities to people. Try to learn, follow from those that are ahead in the industry. It doesn't have to be a CISO. It can be a technologist. It can be a cyber threat analyst, or explore various different fields. Cybersecurity doesn't have is not all about cyber threat hunting. There is so many other things that you can do. There is GRC. There is identity access management. There is cloud security. So don't go into this silo. Just learn broadly, and then you will know where you do the best. So that's where I welcome more and more people to come into cyber and actually help us in our journey and our mission.
I love this, Valmiki, because you mentioned it's not like just this threat hunting and this. And again, like because I talk a lot about blue ocean and red ocean, I tell people try to find, although like the cybersecurity is by itself a red ocean, everyone agrees with me, but still I think there are like areas of blue ocean there. And I can see to your point, GRC is the big one there. There's a lot of work to be done in that space. There's of course like a lot, but because you know from my interaction and conversation with the other like cybersecurity leaders, I think yeah, still we have a lot of places. If you are a startup founder or even if you are a professional, that you can add your value there. I know that we covered a lot, but do you think like we should have covered something, and or any final thing you want to tell us today, Valmiki?
Well, I'll leave you with this thought that cyber defenders are the protectors of the hope, and this is beautifully put together by my friend Paul Sorting, who was the director for cyber at WEF. We are the protectors of the hope of the future. So we want to make sure that we have more and more people join that mission, and we need to expand that cyber capacity and workforce, give more people the opportunity. It has a tremendous potential to do dual opportunity, secure and protect the future, but also give more economic opportunities to people in terms of jobs in the industry.
Great. Valmiki, final thing, where people can find more about you and your organization.
Well, I'm readily available on LinkedIn. Go find Valmiki Mukherjee as in the name here. I go by Val. So ping me, directly connect with me. You can find more about my nonprofit work at cyberfuturefoundation.org. You can find more about the where I'm CISO at accolite.org, accolite.com. So both areas, find me and love to connect with you and your audience.
Sure, I will make sure that all the links will be in the show notes. Well, thank you very much, Valmiki. I really enjoyed our conversation today. It was like it was a rich one because you touched base on a lot of topics that I think everyone in cybersecurity or even curious about cybersecurity, they should know about it. So thank you very much for your valuable time today. And this is usually how I end my episodes. For the audience, if you are a first time listener or viewer, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. For the regular audience, thank you again for your commitment and for your feedback that you provide as usual. And if you would love to discuss any topic, you have any idea, you are a startup yourself and you need a place where you can showcase what you are doing, please reach out to me. I would love to speak to you and we can arrange for that. Time zone is not a difference, is not an issue because as you see, Valmiki is in Texas, I'm in Dubai, so we can manage this, no issues at all. Well, thank you very much for tuning in and we'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Excellent.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.